Hello everyone and welcome to this early access look at the Mortal Empires DLC. In this 1v1 match, I'll be playing the Wood Elves led by Mel Gibson. And guys, I'm going to be facing off against Indie Pride and Milk and Cookies Total War, who's going to be leading the Vermintide. So let's jump right into this game, guys, and have a bit of fun. So over here in Vanguard, I do have 3 groups of these Glade Riders with the Hagbane tips, and I definitely think they're MVPs in this matchup. Firstly, these bad boys do have 150 range, which allows them to outrange a lot of the Skaven skirmisher type units. But the really nice thing about them in this matchup is the fact that they do magic damage. So Gutter Runners and Plague Monks and several other Skaven units do have a very good physical ward save. So if we look over here at these Gutter Runners, for example, they have a physical ward save of 25%. I think Plague Monks are at about 15, but let's double check just to be sure. So yes, indeed, they are at 15. So having that magic damage on these guys is going to be very useful for kind of cutting down these physical resist Skaven units. In my front line, I do have an alternating combination of the War Dancers who do very, very well against lightly armored infantry. You can see they have 36 weapon strength with a true bonus versus infantry of 8. On top of that, they have pretty good stats, pretty much across the board. I mean, they have 44 melee attack, 34 melee defense isn't bad for a unit like this. And they also do have very good movement speed, so they can chase down some of these fleeting Skaven. But you know what? We'll see how they do. And on top of all that, they do have a physical ward save of 20%. So in the front line, they're going to be mixed in with Dryads, and Dryads are very good in this matchup for the same reason that the Glade Riders with the Hagbane tips are. These guys do have a physical ward save, so they're going to be a little bit more resilient against the Skaven infantry, but the nice thing is that they do magic damage. So if they come up against Plague Monks, they're basically going to mitigate the defensive stats of those Plague Monks. So that's pretty much it for my front line. I do also have a Branch Wraith right here who's going to provide the Call of the Wild. So this ability right here gives +5 melee attack to all nearby troops in a relatively small radius. So if you guys see that circle, the radius actually needs to hit the center flag of each unit to give it the buff. So once the battle starts, I'll probably be moving it like right over in this area, so it's actually buffing both of these groups. And again, the Branch Wraith isn't a terrible melee combatant. It does have 330 weapon strength, 52 melee attack, and also does magic damage. So having him in the front line will definitely be quite helpful. Aside from that, I do have some Wild Riders in the back to kind of chase down some of the Skaven and maybe help deal with the Rat Ogres, and of course, the mighty Orion, or Mel Gibson as we like to call him, and he's definitely going to be pretty scary in this matchup. And the Skaven are exceptional at sniping Lords. They have the Gutter Runners, they have the Warp Lightning Cannon, which does massive damage against large targets. So Orion does have this item called the Cloak of Isha, which I'm really hoping will mitigate that. When he's below 20% HP, he gets a 44% physical, well, not physical ward save, but ward save against all types of damage. On top of that, it does kind of trigger a healing buff. So he's very hard to kill, for sure. Like, he'll go down relatively quick because he only has 30 armor, and his melee defense is pretty low at 30, but once he actually gets below that threshold of 20%, it becomes extremely tough to kill him. So on top of that, to kind of keep him alive, I do have a Spell Singer with the Lore of Life, a Mighty Great Eagle flying above, and I think that's pretty much it for my army, guys. So let's go ahead and take a look at Indie Pride's forces. So over here, he does have a couple Gutter Runners with slings, and you can see they're getting some nice little volleys on my Wild Riders, so I'll need to pull up and around the flank. And what you want to do with these type of skirmisher units is go kind of pressure the flank, because then it's going to be hard for his missile units to get a good angle, and you can kind of just pick off these very weak units like these Plague Monks, and you probably don't want to be shooting at Storm Vermin, who are very well armored, but the Plague Monks are definitely going to be an ideal target. Aside from that, Indie Pride does have some Plague Monks, which are, pretty good in most matchups. They do have that physical ward save, but like I said, it's going to be mitigated very heavily by my magic damage. On top of that, he's got a couple Storm Vermin with the Swords and Shields, so these guys are going to be very tough for my War Dancers. It's definitely going to be kind of the core of his army. They have 90 armor, and War Dancers and Dryads don't really have the best armor-piercing damage, so I'm really going to need to use maybe Orion or some of my other troops to kind of take these guys down. In the back, he's got the Warp Lightning Cannon, which is probably going to be shooting at my Lord for most of this game. He's got some Poison Wing Globadiers, who do have anti-large and armor-piercing, so this was kind of the reason I didn't want to bring Treekin. So on paper, Treekin might be pretty good against the Rat Infantry. They're hard to kill, and the Skaven anti-large does come in the form of missiles, but I really didn't want to gamble that, just in case he did bring a couple of these, and thankfully that did pay off. On top of that, he does have a Warlock Engineer who does have the Howling Warp Gale, I think is what it's called. So this ability actually locks down flying units. So this is another reason why I didn't bring a Flying Lord and I brought Orion instead, because he can just snare this unit and then pick them off with the Globadiers. And of course, he does have Lord Skrolk, the Mighty Plague Rat. And let's see what he brought. So Libra Bubonicus, which is just a very powerful Spirit Leech effect. He does have the Pestilent Birth as well as the Vermintide. So guys, without further ado, let's get this show on the road. So right now, I'm just using my my Cav over here on the flanks, and you'll see I'm just going to be teeing off on these Plague Monks. So they're definitely not having a good time getting a taste of their own medicine with that poison. And I do have my Great Eagle kind of poking around as well. And the Great Eagle hits pretty hard against lightly armored targets, so I figured at some point in the battle, I want to be going after Lord Skrolk with that Great Eagle. In the frontline engagement, you can see the War Dancers are advancing, but they are taking some slinger fire from Indie Pride, so very well played, getting some good harass right here. But look at the damage these Plague Monks are taking. They're just getting melted by those magic arrows, and the Mighty Great Eagle does fly above. I was actually going to go back and maybe interrupt Skrolk and kind of push him back, But Indie Pride does actually use a Howling Warp Gale. But unfortunately, his guys, aren't in the best position to get too many volleys off, and I think his Gutter Runners were being compromised a little bit. But he still does get several really, really good volleys with these Globadiers right here and does some okay damage. But the Great Eagle should be able to get away, and of course I do have some healing. So the frontline engagement is underway. You can see the Dryads coming in here, as well as these War Dancers charging down the hill. They're going to be engaging on these Plague Monks right here. And they'll definitely win that engagement. They have that very very good physical ward save. Look at that. That one did like a somersault as she came down the hill. War Dancers are at 95. The Plague Monks are actually holding pretty well, despite the charge, but I think these guys had taken some skirmish beforehand. So you can see Orion is in here, and he's definitely very good against the Skaven because he's hard to pick off, and he causes fear and terror. So once he starts, you can see he's just sending those Skaven slaves flying right there. And he does also have the Hawk's Talon, which is a bombardment ability, so I'm going to be using that in the Storm Vermin. And you can see it does some okay damage to those guys. Nothing terribly devastating, but it's still doing its work. At the same time, you can see Indie Pride's Warp Lightning Cannon is getting some really good shots on Orion, just kind of sending some of my Dryads flying, so that's very tough. But I do have good healing, and you can see Indie Pride does also use the Libra Bubonicus, so Orion has gotten so low. On the outside, I'm just using my Wild Riders to kind of cycle charge these Rat Ogres and kind of just keep Lord Skrull busy and just stress him out a little bit. And you can see they're doing pretty good. They do have that regrowth, so hopefully they can kind of fend him off a little bit. On the far side, this is where things are going very well for me. You can see my Glade Riders with the Hagbane tips are just kind of strafing and driving around these riding around. They're definitely not driving anything, but they're riding around these Poison Wind Globadiers. And the Globadiers are very heavily armored, but they're still getting through and doing some pretty good damage to these rats right here, so that's going well for me. In the main line engagement, you can see that Orion's just all over the place. Balance of power is very, very even at this point, but having him in here is going to be very good against the Storm Vermin, who are heavily armored because Orion hits like a truck. If you look at his stats right here, he actually has 512 weapon strength, with a lot of that being armor piercing. So I'm getting a nice Earthblood in the front line, and let's go ahead and take an overarching look at things. So the frontline engagement here is relatively even. You can see my Wild Riders in the back have kind of a, the Rat Ogres got called to the front, it looks like, and the Wild Riders right now are going to get right into these Gutter Runners. And also I do have my Glade Riders with the Hagbane tips in the back, just kind of circling his army. I'm just trying to do as many laps as I can around the back and just shoot at everything I can. You can see the Warp Lightning Cannon crew is taken offline, so that means that Orion is going to be relatively safe for now. The War Dancers and Dryads are really, really doing good for me. I mean, it looks like they've crushed most of the Plague Monks, and I think the only thing fighting for my opponent is going to be these Storm Vermin, who are, the more durable of the Skaven infantry. But still, it's going pretty well. I do have that Branch Wraith over here in the main fight. I think it actually pushed back here, so he's providing that melee attack to these Wild Riders. You can see the Mighty Great Eagle is going to be taking one for the team, unfortunately. It's very low and broken. It's probably going to run off the battlefield right now. But it looks like my Cap have been able to get into these Globadiers, so that's going pretty well. But really kind of the very determining factor for the way this match is going right now are these Glade Riders. They're just insane. I'm able to circle my opponent's army because the Skaven only have fast infantry. So the movement speed on these Glade Riders is going to be very tough for the Skaven to handle. And you can see these Rat Ogres are just getting picked off by these poison arrows, and a lot of damage is coming through to these guys. These guys only have 2k HP, they're shaken, and also these guys do apply poison, so that's going to mitigate their vigor and as well as a multitude of other stats. So right now you can see that Orion, I think, is lurking over here. So he was able to chase off this Warlock Engineer, which was pretty nice. A bit of a mistake, though. I definitely should have just been going after Lord Skrull the entire time, because Skrull can definitely not stand up to Orion. And you can see he's just running through and just punting these rats as he goes through, which is great. So you can see the Rat Ogres are trying to get into the back and just kind of secure their missile line, but it looks like my Dryads and some of my War Dancers are pushing through, so they should be able to kind of... You just see the rat get punted by Orion. I love that. And it looks like Orion has actually taken out some of these Rat Ogres as well. And man, he is just a force to be reckoned with. He is so darn hard to kill. So my Glade Riders are kind of parked in the back, getting some really good crossfire on this Skaven. You guys can see the balance of power is still very, very even. Looks like Lord Skrull has summoned a few groups of the Plague Monks, and guys, the hitbox issue with summoned units has now been fixed. So I hope you guys all enjoy using Lord Skrull and summoning a bunch of lovely Plague Rats. In the back, you can see my Glade Riders are kind of just shooting at Lord Skrull and trying to poison him and drag him down because Orion is coming for him. And Orion is definitely one of the better duelists in the game. He's, I think Kolek can beat him, Krokar can probably beat him as well. But aside from that, he can definitely handle most other lords. So you can see Lord Skrull is having to scurry away right now. We do have some Eternal Guards, and the Mighty Great Eagle not out of the picture yet. It's going to be helping out as well on Lord Skrull. And a lot of the Skaven army is routing over here. You can see my Glade Riders with the Hagbane tips are kind of forcing off the Rat Ogres and just kind of keeping all of these guys at bay right now. The Branch Wraith is coming back. I am out of ammunition on this guy, but they're not pushovers in melee. They do have 28 melee attack and 24 melee defense, so they can definitely do their thing. So right now you guys can see the balance of power shifting very heavily. You can see Orion or Mel Gibson or whatever you guys want to call him. It's just basically trotting all over Lord Skrull, who I think is routed right now. I think he's broken. Because Orion does cause fear and terror, so that's definitely very strong, and I do not think Skrull is immune to psychology. Perhaps he is. I think he has Encourage down there. I do not think he's immune to psychology. So you can see he's been pushed off at this point. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what this Skaven have. So there is a bit of a last stand over here. You can see some of my War Dancers and some of these Glade Riders are fighting some of these Rat Ogres and trying to push them off the battlefield. And you know, these War Dancers do very good damage against lightly armored targets, like I mentioned before, so they should be able to finish off these Rat Ogres who only have 30 armor. But it looks like Indie Pride was able to rally some of his Globadiers right here. But once the rest of this like big, you know, Wood Elf horde, sounds so strange. It's so strange to say like a Wood Elf horde. But this group of Wood Elves comes over here with Orion, and it looks like I'm getting a nice Earthblood to kind of top him off. They're going to kill Skrulk, and then the rest of the Skaven should buckle. And even though the Great Eagle is very low, it's going to fly over and it's going to cause fear, and these Skaven are already on the brink of breaking, so that should be all she wrote. So I think that's going to be it, guys. So very well played to Indie Pride. It was definitely a fun game, but man, the Wood Elves, quite a bit of fun. So one of the biggest issues in Total War Warhammer 2 so far in dealing with the Skaven. So if you're looking at Gutter Runners with Poison or the Slingers like Indie Pride brought, they have very good physical ward save. They're hard to catch, they're fast, and the physical ward save would give them a real good edge against enemy missile units. But having the magic attacks on these Glade Riders was so useful against this Skaven. I was able to just cut down these Plague Monks and really mitigate one of the things that makes them so strong with that physical ward save. And the same kind of goes for the Dryad, so you can see 73 kills here, 32 here, 82 here, 152 on these War Dancers. So pretty much all of these units, almost paid for themselves. I mean, he had pretty elite infantry by Skaven standards, 2 groups of Storm Vermin. He did have some Skaven slaves, and some of the kills may have come from that, but these are still pretty good ratios for these units. The Great Eagle did its job. It kind of took one for the team. It did use the Howling Warp Gale, which did take some of his Winds of Magic, but, I feel like it's good in this matchup. It can fight the Rat Ogres, it can go after Lord Skrulk, it can go after the Warlock Engineer, and you can pretty much probably beat all of those guys in melee. So, and Orion, I think he's a really strong pick. Oh, the Glade, not the Glade Rider, but the Glady atop the Great Dragon, that's a little bit risky. You could be using your healing and, other variables to kind of keep her alive, but with Howling Warp Gale plus these Globadiers, it's very risky. She could go down very, very quick and doesn't have that sustainability like Orion does. So, I definitely like him quite a bit. So hopefully you guys enjoy that Mortal Empire showcase between myself and Indie Pride. We've definitely played quite a few games. I think we played probably like 10 or 15 games, so I will be posting a couple more in the next few days. So guys, thanks again for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing Orion in action, and guys, have an excellent night, and take care.